Good evening. We'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Berkeley County Board of Education for Tuesday, December 9th, 2014. I call the meeting to order. I declare that a quorum is present and that the media has been notified. Now for approval of tonight's agenda. Prior to asking for a motion and a second, I would like to amend the agenda to move the legacy builders up to agenda item number 4, following the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. We have a lot of folks here tonight to recognize, and we have some that have additional conflicts with their schedule later this evening. So please consider that. I'll accept a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda with the amendment of moving legacy builders to the 4th agenda spot. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Second?
Second.
Ms. Walford, thank you. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda with the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries unanimously. Tonight's agenda has been approved. If you would now please join me with the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, with the changes to the agenda, we'll now go to legacy builders. Special recognition. Dr. Thompson, we'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. First special recognition tonight, I'd like to introduce Mr. Scott Price from the South Carolina School Boards Association for special recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the school board. My name is Scott Price. I'm the Executive Director-elect of the South Carolina School Boards Association. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Doug Cooper, formerly with this board, and also a member of the South Carolina School Boards Association Board of Directors since 2011. And Doug, in his service, served on a number of committees: the Audit Committee, the Finance Committee, the Legislative Committee, and on down the line. Doug was the kind of board member that when you had a complex issue, you could turn it over to Doug and you knew that it'd get handled well. And we called on Doug when the governor called the School Boards Association and wanted to receive a briefing on a comprehensive education funding reform plan that we've been working on for several years. We called on Doug to meet with her and brief her on that, and that was very successful. Doug was a strong advocate, is a strong advocate for South Carolina public schools and public school students. He's a thinker, and sometimes you could even change his mind, but not often. But anyway, I'd like to present this plaque to him and for his service on our board of directors from 2011 to 2014 for the South Carolina School Boards Association.
We'd also, from the District Administration and the Board of Education, like to thank Sheldon Etheridge. Dr. Etheridge could not be with us tonight for his service on the board for the last 4 years, and also like to recognize Doug Cooper for his service on the board for a couple of terms. Doug was the board chair when I became superintendent, and I relied on his experience very much, and appreciate everything that you've done for the children of Berkeley County. Thank you for your service.
Well, I'd just like to thank all of the board members and the administration. And I'm very proud of this organization, teachers, the students, everybody here. I mean, we've been going through a lot of adverse conditions the last several years, but our students will soon be moving into new buildings, new programs. We've been able to get probably the first ever excellent report card grade, more Palmetto finest schools, blue ribbon schools, and state administrators. And I think that's quite an accomplishment for this organization. It goes a lot to the executive leadership and the leadership of the board. And I just want to thank everybody for maintaining that focus on children and teachers and learning in Berkeley County, while there's been plenty of opportunity to have been distracted throughout all of this, as I say over and over again, personal and political agendas. But our kids have not been let down because of this. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Scott Price and the State School Board Association for all they do, and encourage this board to be more active in that organization. That's the voice of change. That's where you get to talk to members that share a lot of the same views that you do. So thank you again for all that you do and will continue to do. And I'm very humbled by this because, like I said, when you get on in that seat, your job is supposed to be to take care of the kids and the teachers and basically remove the problems that they have so that the learning can happen. So keep up the great work. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Murray, Dr. Thompson, members of the board. At this time, I'd like to ask Amy Murray, our Public Information Officer for Community Engagement, to come forward with our legacy builders.
Greetings and good evening, Mr. Chair, Dr. Thompson, members of the board, and all of you who have joined us tonight. This is a very special time where we pause to recognize the awesome things that are going on in our district. So I'd like to take this moment to outline some of the stories in our Legacy Builders publication. So first, we have some stars in the making at Marrington Middle School of the Arts and Cane Bay Middle School. Both schools placed in the top 4 at the Mock Trial Low Country Regional Competition held by the South Carolina Bar Association, and both will advance as wildcard teams with the possibility of competing at the state level. Next, we have the students at Cane Hoy Elementary and Middle participated in a very special program that focused on the importance of reading. BP Chemical Company and the University of South Carolina teamed up to surprise the students. With the help of Cocky's Reading Express, the 10 undergraduate students from the University of South Carolina came and read to the students with special guest Cocky the Gamecock. Cocky's Reading Express is a collaboration between the University of South Carolina Student Government and the School of Library and Information Science Center for Children's Books and Literacy. The purpose of the program is to instill a love of reading in the hearts of elementary school students while showing them that acquiring strong reading skills is a large part of academic success. Through the program, students are given books to take home, not only as reminders of Cocky's visit, but also to remind them to continue to read. Also, William Bennett, the director of choirs at Cane Bay High School, has gone from being one of 25 semifinalists to a top 10 finalist for the Grammy Award for Music Educators. This is the second year the organization will recognize a music educator who has made a significant and lasting contribution to the field of music education and who demonstrates a commitment to the broader cause of maintaining music education in schools. This year, 7,000 nominations were submitted, and the winner will be selected during the 2015 Grammy Week and will be flown to Los Angeles to accept the award. And finally, last but certainly not least, 2 Berkeley County School District assistant principals were selected as finalists for the prestigious 2015 South Carolina Elementary Assistant Principal of the Year Award and the South Carolina Middle Level Assistant Principal of the Year Award. The award honors assistant principals who have demonstrated personal excellence, collaborative leadership, curriculum and instruction assessment, and personalization. Kelly Robertson, an assistant principal at College Park Middle School, was chosen as a finalist for the Middle Level Assistant Principal of the Year award. She taught at College Park Middle for 10 years before transitioning to an assistant principal role. Jennifer Thielman, an assistant principal at Sangaree Intermediate, was chosen as a finalist for the 2015 South Carolina Elementary Assistant Principal of the Year award. Ms. Thielman taught in Asheboro, North Carolina for a year before joining us here in Berkeley County at Sangaree Intermediate. She taught 3rd and 4th grade and has been a math and curriculum coach before transitioning into an assistant principal role. And I am very happy and proud to report that Ms. Jennifer Thielman was indeed chosen as the Elementary Assistant Principal of the Year. She received the news Friday afternoon, this past Friday, and was congratulated in person by State Superintendent of Education-elect Molly Spearman, along with Dr. Thompson and several other district officials during a choral concert with faculty, staff, and students present. Ms. Thielman was chosen for her dedication to students and commitment to the school community. And when I asked her about the legacy she'd like to leave at Sangaree Intermediate, she told me, "I was fortunate enough to grow up in a small community where, as the song says, everybody knows your name. This is the legacy I desire to leave at Sangaree Intermediate School. I want every student to remember that I knew him or her individually and was willing to do everything in my power to make him or her successful." We're so very proud of Ms. Robertson and Ms. Thielman, as they both represent excellence in our district. That concludes the stories I would like to highlight, but please take a moment to review the publication yourself because it's chock full of positive things that are going on in the district. Thanks so much for your time, patience, and attention. And now we have some legacy builders of our own in the house tonight, and I invite Ms. Sonia Addison Stewart to acknowledge them.
Chairman Murray, Dr. Thompson, board members, I'm here tonight to recognize Berkeley County School District legacy builders, 2 of them. The first one, VP Cooper River Plant, is a leader in the energy industry and one of the leaders in STEM education investment. VP Cooper River Plant has donated $62,000 for STEM-related activities to many schools in Berkeley County School District. This is something that they wish to continue next year. Additionally, VP Cooper River Plant is very active with their business partner school, Cane Hoy Elementary Middle School, where they're involved in the Lunch Buddy program, A Day of Caring, reading to elementary students. VP Cooper River Plant also built and supports a Little Free Library, as well as having representation on the School Improvement Council at Cane Hoy Elementary Middle School. I would like to call to the front Mr. Dan Hunt, VP retiree and Berkeley County School volunteer, and Ms. Thomasina Simmons, VP Lab Team Leader and Cane Hoy School volunteer, to present the donation to our district and to be recognized for being a collaborative partner for supporting STEM initiatives in our schools and by being a Berkeley County School District legacy builder.
On behalf of the BP Cooper River plant, we are honored to be able to present this check to Berkeley County School District, and we're looking forward to working with y'all next year.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Berkeley County School District, and specifically the school board that I represent, we'd like to thank you for all of your support. We look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Our next Berkeley County School District legacy builder is Bosch. Bosch is a multinational leader in engineering and electronics and the largest supplier of automotive components. As part of the Bosch Charleston plant 40th anniversary, 9 teachers in Berkeley County were awarded $1,000 teacher grants to support STEM-related activities. Some of the projects include a butterfly garden, redesigning plasma tables, and air boats using VEX robotic kits. I would like to call to the front Mr. Robert Jackson, Communications Director for Bosch Charleston plant, to present their total donation of $9,000 to our district and to be recognized for being a collaborative partner for supporting STEM initiatives in our schools and by being a Berkeley County School District legacy builder.
So, on behalf of Bosch, we are the largest automotive supplier in the world, and our future employers and families, they come from the area of Berkeley County. We supported the Tri-County area, we want to continue supporting the Tri-County area. This money goes straight to the teachers. Get it in the teachers' hands, it goes straight to the classroom, it goes straight to the children. So that's really where we wanted to push the money, and we want to thank everybody involved that helped to make this happen. We had 60 people apply. We gave 40 out, 40 because it's our 40th anniversary. We've been in the community, open on Dorchester Road, and 9,000 went to Berkeley County, and the rest went to Charleston, Dorchester District 2, and Dorchester District 4. So we tried to spread it out and help all the teachers and help Berkeley kids. So thank you to everybody.
We also would like to call all teachers, administrators, school reps, for all the schools receiving the grants to come up and take a picture as well.
Pass the check.
And our last set of legacy builders that we would like to acknowledge tonight are New Corps and Daniel Island Community Fund. Tonight we have with us Ms. Jane Baker of Daniel Island Community Fund and Mr. Gift Dottridge of New Corps. Together, they teamed up and gave a combined $47,350 to Cainhoy Elementary and Middle Schools for their after-school literacy and STEM programs. Would you please join me?
My understanding is we got moved up to the fourth agenda spot, so we had a little more time to make a speech tonight. I'd like to use all that time. Just real quickly, we at New Corps work very hard to do the things that where we live and where we work to try to raise the quality of life. And I can't think of anything more important than doing the things for the children in education. And when we get to partner with Daniel Island Community Fund, it's just obviously doubles the impact, and they're great to work with. Another night, I'd like to give a huge shout out to the administrators and teachers at Cainhoy Elementary and Middle School. It's a treat to go over and work with them and see their dedication and what they do with the kids. So thank you very much for this tonight.
I would just like to add that this donation allows us to have an after-school program at Cainhoy Elementary School 5 days a week.
Thank you, Jane.
We'd like to thank all of our visitors for being with us here tonight and allowing us to celebrate the wonderful, successful things that you're doing for our children. I'd like to give everyone an opportunity at this time. If you would like to exit, we are beginning a 2-page agenda. So it would be a good time for you to take advantage. And thank you again for being with us and for all you do. Mr. Cooper, it was great seeing you again, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. You smile when you say that.
Yeah, they need signatures.
On the signatures.
Get your autograph.
Signature on that from the school.
Get your signature. Folks, these students are here tonight to see our school board in action as part of their high school curriculum, so please allow us to give them their signatures. Everybody, come on, we'll get your signature.
Thank you for being here.
You must play defensive back.
You want me to sign this
What's your name, young lady? Come here.
for the agenda?
Here you go, sweetie. Thank you for being here. You're a senior.
Everybody, so what were you guys supposed to do? Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight, seeing all that we do. Here you go, ladies.
I'm happy too.
It's okay.
Here you go, young man. Sure.
Thank you guys for coming out. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right. Thank you all again for being with us this evening. All right. Back to the agenda, school board. Next up is agenda item number 4, entitled Approval of Minutes for the regular meeting of the November 11th, 2014 school board meeting. Before I request a motion and a second, I have received communication from 3 of our board members that have some concerns with how the minutes were represented. To respond to that, I've asked the Secretary, Kathy Schwabe, to please conduct some research to determine the best way to handle these concerns. So, Secretary Schwabe, I'll hand it over to you at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We follow Robert's Rules of Order as our parliamentary procedures for all of our meetings. And, of course, that was the source that I went to for this. We absolutely can attach an amendment to the minutes of the meeting. And so once they are approved tonight as our minutes for the November 11th, thank you, meeting, the amendment, I've drafted one based on samples that I found. The amendment would be a written amendment that, if agreed upon, I would send to the chair, and upon his signature would be attached to the approved minutes. And it could read, at the December 9th meeting, these 3 members, and their names would be listed, requested a written amendment attached to the approved minutes for the November 11th meeting that lists their votes as abstentions. The vote tally will be amended to show a unanimous vote of 6-0-3.
Ms. Schwabe, would you make your motion, and then if anyone wants to discuss your motion, we can begin that discussion.
Sure, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the meeting minutes for a regular meeting November 11th, 2014.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. A motion has been made by Mrs. Schwabe. That motion has been seconded by Mr. Wright to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of November 11th, 2014. Do we have any discussion regarding this matter?
So just so I understand,
Mr. Obie, your floor is yours.
the amendment will be in writing from Ms. Swaby to you to be attached to the minutes. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we don't have to make any mention of that amendment now? Because it sounds like we're approving the meeting minutes as they stand, so we don't make mention of the amendment,
That's what I'm
then,
saying.
and we approve the minutes.
I just read, did
Yeah.
you want to change the wording that I just read to you?
No.
I mean, I took liberty of drafting what was asked.
I understand that, but that was, the motion stated to approve the minutes, of the November 11th, 2014 board meeting as presented to us in our agenda item that's on our computers.
And that's how I understand it as well.
So I don't see any amendment there, so do you want to include
What's
that amendment?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So do we need to include that amendment as part of these minutes, or is it already assumed that the amendment is going to be included?
You're asking when the amendment should be written, Mr. Obie?
When it should be written and when it should be included as far as the meeting minutes go?
What did your research show, Ms. Schwabe? When should the amendment be prepared?
That written amendments are not written during the meeting. They're actually written as soon as possible afterwards and sent to the board chair by the secretary.
Okay.
So since we haven't had, and I'll just toss this in if that's
Sure.
okay.
No, I asked you to please report on this.
Since we haven't had this sort of thing before, and in general, any corrections deal with spelling or numbers or that sort of thing, those would actually be considered corrections to the minutes. As the minutes stand right now, and the purpose of minutes for our meeting are to state actions taken by the board. And so there's no correction because it is still a unanimous vote according to the language of Robert's rules. And so that's why I said the vote tally will be amended to show a unanimous vote of 6-0-3. And I can list all the board members' names,
Right.
with who the 6, who the 3 are. And so for all eternity, anyone who wanted to go back and refer to minutes would see our approved minutes and then an amendment to those minutes.
Any other comments? Just, Ms. Lee?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Under that same section, and I can show you on here, for the minutes, for the amended motion, the vote, is it supposed to be 6-3 or is it supposed to be 3-6?
It would be 603 because they're asking for their vote to be recorded.
The amendment.
Oh, yes.
The proposed amendment.
Right.
Would be 6-3.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
all right. Sorry, I was making sure I was reading that correct. Okay.
Because as long as she writes that it was defeated, then you're telling the reader that the amendment, is that you're referring to the amendment?
Yeah, but so you put down the yes goes first and then the no goes second. So it's 6 first, then 3.
So do we have any issue with that? Now, that's a separate issue.
Well,
I want to stick with the one
if
we've
it's
got
6
now. We've got a
first.
motion on the table.
The Senate states the board voted to deny the amended motion by a vote of 6-3.
I think you're good.
So that's wordsmithing,
I
but
think
it
you're good.
probably wouldn't be a bad practice to write it in order from this point on.
Yeah, I'm okay
That's
with that.
certainly,
That's true. Yeah, it should
I'm fine either way. I just didn't know if that was, I couldn't remember if that's how we typically do that or not. That's how the minutes look.
Let's speak to the motion on the table. I would certainly support it. The motion is it allows our 3 members, specifically our 2 new members, who obviously are still learning protocol. I think that's a fair statement. And I would certainly support the motion as you have it, as you have read it, Ms. Schwabe. Any other comments regarding the motion on the
Mr. Chair, I
Mr. Hayes,
think
you're
we've
right
got
now.
2 different amendments being talked about here.
No, sir. Let's stick to the question on the table. Would you like it repeated?
No, I think, the vote that we had, which was 6-0 and now 3, was the vote on to accept the resignation. The other vote, 3-6, was the amendment by Mr. McQuillan.
Correct.
And I think there's 2 different things being discussed here. We need to make
Mr. Hayes, you've asked for a clarification. I'll refer back to the Secretary. Madam Secretary, could you please repeat the motion regarding the subject in question?
I love research. So what Ms. Lee was referring to was the amended motion of Mr. McQuillan, not an amendment. He amended the original motion, and that is stated correctly in the minutes.
Correct.
Right.
And no one
And
is
that was my
questioning that.
point. There's nothing to correct in the minutes.
But the question on the table, could you repeat your motion again that was seconded by Mr. Wright that you made earlier, just so that we all understand the question being asked? the motion regarding the amendment being allowed to be a part of the minutes?
Right, so the amendment would say, at the December 9th meeting,
November 11th?
well, no, at this meeting is when the, okay, don't try to trip me up.
I wish I could say I was mistaken. I wish I could.
At the December 9th meeting, Mr. Philip Obie, Mr. Mac McQuillan, and Ms. Sally Wofford requested a written amendment attached to the approved minutes of the November 11th, 2014 meeting that lists their votes as abstentions. The vote tally will be amended to show a unanimous vote of 6-0-3.
Thank you. Does that clarify, Mr. Hayes? We're good? All right. Any other comments before we call the question?
I think we finally made it.
Thank you, Ms. Walford. Keep it straight. All right, we'll call the question. A motion has been made by Mrs. Schwabe. It's been repeated enough, I will not dare try. It has been seconded by Mr. Wright. All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of the November 11th, 2014 school board meeting, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mrs. Schwabe, for helping us get through that. Now we'll move to agenda item number 5, approval of the October 2014 Head Start budget. Do I have a motion and a second?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the October 2014 Head Start information as presented in agenda item 5.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Lee. A motion has been made by Mr. Hayes. That motion was seconded by Mrs. Lee to approve the October 2014 Head Start information as presented in agenda item 5. Do we have any discussion regarding the motion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve the October 2014 Head Start information as presented in agenda item 5, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries unanimously. Dr. Whitley, I thought I saw earlier, your Head Start report has been approved. Next up is agenda item 7, citizen comments. We have 2 tonight. As I begin to read the rules, we'll ask our speakers to go ahead and approach the podium. Up first tonight is Tommy Newell. Mr. Newell will be followed by Mr. Jeff Ruhr. As Mr. Newell is approaching the podium, please allow me to read the citizen comment procedures. In order to conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, we ask that you honor the following guidelines. Stakeholder comments are welcomed and encouraged. However, the board will not take immediate action on public comments at this meeting. Any person wishing to address the board must register prior to the meeting. Comments must be regarding programs, policies, or procedures. Comments regarding complaints against employees other than district-level executives or references to students other than the child of the speaker will not be heard in public session. Groups addressing the same topic should select one speaker. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And finally, the board chair reserves the right to allot additional time or halt public comments that do not adhere to the guidelines. Mr. Newell, welcome. Thank you for being here this evening. Mr. Newell would like to talk about the A-B schedule. Mr. Newell, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I'm a graduate of Stratford High School. I currently volunteer coach there. I have a 15-year-old daughter who plays multiple sports there. She's also in the 10th grade. She came home and told me that next year they're going to the AB schedule, and a lot of people aren't liking it. So I did some research, and I have a bunch of friends that go to, their children go to Cane Bay and some other schools in the district. Now, Stratford has the highest SAT scores in the district, lowest dropout rates. We incorporate in our academies, we have engineering, health science, biomedical science, service learning, aerospace technology, which will help out with Boeing, computer science, forensics, carpentry, auto tech, which my daughter has a 98, so guess you can change my oil. Culinary arts, broadcast journalism, sports medicine. We have the most AP courses offered and the highest overall scores. Why would we want to change that to cause children to struggle more? I can't afford to have my daughter busting her rear end this year to try to get a high GPA for only to go down next year. I understand other schools are doing it, but Stratford's a leader. Stratford's the flagship of Berkeley County. I'm imploring you. I mean, on the AB schedule, 8 courses a year at the same time. We're doing 4x4 now. Teachers are typically teaching 75 to 90 children per semester. If you go to the AB, it's 150 to 180 at one time. So you're actually asking your teachers to do a lot more paperwork. They can't get a one-on-one relationship with some of these children that need that one-on-one relationship. So you're just making it difficult. I'm asking you to give Stratford 4 more years to show you that their way is the best way for Berkeley schools. You know, if you take the children off of the schedule they have now and put AB, we won't have early graduates. Children strive to graduate early. That's a bragging right. Look how I busted my butt and excelled past everybody else to have early graduation. And you're taking that away from them. Now you're going to have kids that shouldn't be in school just there, taking up spaces, taking up seats. And what about the ones that are struggling, that are failing, or have bad attendance? With this here program, they have no chance after the first semester is over. So I implore you, do some more research, talk to your administrators, talk to your teachers, but most of all, listen to your students. Listen to the parents of these students. I just got elected to be in county council. Trust me, I got to listen to everybody. I listen to daggum chicken ordinance. All right? Don't worry about people with chickens. I ain't got time to mess around with that stuff. But I'm asking every one of you, talk to the teachers, talk to your administrators, and get a better plan. I know Stratford can show y'all how things should be done because I don't mess with those ladies. Those ladies know what they're doing. Okay? I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. We appreciate you being with us this evening. Mr. Ruhr. Mr. Ruhr, as you approach the podium, the last time you were here, you made a challenge, and we are going to meet your challenge tonight. So please stick around to hear that proclamation.
Thank you, Chairman Murray, Superintendent Thompson, board members. Seeing as how this is the last meeting of 2014, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the board and the district for the positive things you have done in this last year. 2 that come to mind is the safety improvements you've made in our schools. You've really exceeded beyond expectations, really a good thing. And the other thing was the program that Mrs. Wolf had for the special needs students, the attitude behavior analysis. You've expanded that program to train all the teachers, not just the special needs teachers. This is really a great thing because there are children that if you understand where they're coming from and how to deal with them, you can prevent negative reactions, and I applaud you for that. I would like to say I'm looking forward to working with this board in the coming year. There's 2 things in particular I would like to see done. The first one would be, now that our economy has recovered, I would like to see us at least go back to the supplies for school teachers to what it was before, and maybe even a little more. The teachers shouldn't have to dig in their own pockets to get the supplies for their classroom. Speaking of teachers, they are our greatest assets. And right now, our teachers, on average, are $8,000 less than the national average. And I'd like to see if we can do something to get that up, because good teachers are hard to come by. And in closing, I'll say Merry Christmas to all of you.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Ruhr, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ruhr.
Mr. Ruhr, you are always here to support us, and we appreciate you, and we need you to keep advocating for new school buses like you have done in the past, and we look forward to fighting that good fight with you. And I thought I saw Miss Renge walk across. We would hope that the Post and Courier would continue their coverage of the tremendous shortage of school buses in our state and the age and the deplorable conditions of our school bus fleet. So I thank Mr. Ruhr and I thank the Post and Courier for shedding light on that very important issue. This concludes citizens' comments tonight, and Mr. Ruhr, again, a very Merry Christmas to you as well, sir. Now we'll move to agenda item number 8, entitled Financial Services. Tonight, Mr. Thomas brings to the board an item for information only, entitled Fiscal Year 2013-2014 Financial Statement Audit Results. Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Thompson, I have a copy of this for y'all after the board meeting. I want y'all to pay attention to Larry.
Yes.
So I don't want you to do this while he's talking. Also, Larry's going to go through a lot of information, so if there's some questions that you may want to have, we can always address those at a later date. So feel free to take some notes if you want to think through those before you do ask them. Also, this is a accumulation of a lot of collaboration among all schools and departments. So I want to thank everybody for their work. Specifically, I want to thank Jackie Carlin, raise your hand, in our office. So I think this is one of the records, I think like 2 weeks, I think it's one of the fastest we've ever done it. So I really appreciate her work. So thank you. Without any further ado, Larry. Larry's going to play piano by himself.
Good evening, Chairman Murray, Dr. Thompson, board members. Good to see you again. For the benefit of the new board members, you will actually receive a couple different documents. One will be the financial statements themselves. There's a couple things I'll talk about there. We also issue what's called a management letter, which is a document of a few pages that's on our letterhead that has some information as well. I know that you are just ringing in anticipation for getting that document. You can't wait to look through it all. To save you from having to do that in all that detail, we actually like to put together a fairly brief PowerPoint presentation, and what it really does is try to hit the highlights for you, the results of the audit, as well as the financial condition of the school district. And in particular, there's about 4 or 5 things that I'll highlight as we go through this that I think are important. From a big picture perspective, I'll talk a little bit more about the opinion, but you did get a clean, unmodified opinion this year as a district, and I'll mention that briefly. Again, the general fund balance did increase this year, and I'll also talk about some significant savings that the district was able to experience through some debt refunding. As far as what I'd like to remind you is when we talk about the audit itself, all of that information in those financial statements, that's actually the responsibility of the district. So that's what Mr. Thomas, Jackie, and their staff are working very hard day to day to put together. And really, when we come in to perform our audit work, really it's almost like the final exam for them in a lot of ways. And so what we actually do, what you hire us to do, is to issue an opinion. And in that opinion, what we're basically saying is all the information in that those financial statements, is it fairly stated, is it correct, is it accurate, or is it not? And so that opinion is kind of that final grade. And so I'm glad to say that for June 30th, 2014 year end, the district did receive what's called an unmodified opinion. I know that doesn't mean anything to anybody, and so what I like to tell you is that's as good as it gets. It really doesn't matter whether you are Boeing, BMW, or Berkeley County School District. That's the goal, is that unmodified opinion. So you ought to be pleased with that, Dr. Thompson, as well as Brantley and Jackie and the staff. The first thing that everybody tends to look at when we start talking about the financial condition of the district is, okay, what's general fund balance? Where do we stand? Even the bond world, that's the first thing they're going to turn to and look at. So got a couple pieces of information on that here. I mentioned the fund balance did increase this year, about $4.9 million. And so where that actually puts the district at June 30th, 2014 is an unassigned fund balance of a little over $42 million. What we do is we tend to look at that and say, okay, how does that compare to our annual expenditures? For what you have budgeted for the 2015 year, it represents 19% of your annual general fund expenditures. And I think it's either the first or the second year that the district has actually gotten to the point that you are above the minimum recommendation that the national organization, the GFOA, stands for the Government Finance Officers Association. It's a national organization that works with a lot of state and local governments. And their recommendation is a minimum of 2 months as far as an unassigned fund balance, and the district is actually above that now. So you ought to be very pleased with that. And where you tend to see some very positive things come from that, it's what I've listed here. But there's two things I really want to point out that I've bolded here. One is, don't forget that when we measure this fund balance at June 30th, the district basically has got to go about 5 to 6 months without receiving any significant property tax revenue. So that fund balance is really what helps with the cash flow for the second half of the calendar year. And to give you an idea about how that helps you, Brantley, this last TAN we issued was just about $15 million, right? Correct. The one that you did this year. If you go back several years, it has been significantly higher than that. So the tax anticipation note, the short-term borrowing the district does, has come down significantly. And the big reason is that increasing fund balance. The second thing that I think is important to highlight is the fact that I mentioned the bond world. The better your fund balance is, the better your interest rates are going to be, the better your bond ratings are going to be, and the end result is going to be some dollar savings to you as a district. And when we get to the debt refunding, I think you'll see some of the results of that. How did we get there? The next few slides I'm going to go through pretty quickly. Brantley is going to post a copy of this, so you'll have an opportunity to have a copy of this. But I've got a couple slides on general fund in terms of how did we get to that increase in fund balance, what really caused that, as well as some slides on the other funds. So you can see general fund revenues, about $208 million. It increased about $13 million compared to the prior year. Almost all of that was due to increases in local property tax revenue. Most of that due to both the millage increase and the increase in assessed values, and due to the increase in the state revenues. And most of that was higher base student costs that you saw with the state revenue. And general fund revenues were about $3.5 million over what was budgeted. And again, I've given you the highlights on what caused that as well. So good results on the revenue side. And on the expenditure side, you'll see that it was about $212 million, about 14 more than what it was in the prior year. Almost all of that, the bulk of that, was due to higher salaries and fringe benefits, as you would expect. And that's about as close as you can get when you talk about actual compared to budget. On a $212 million budget, $11,000. So good job on the budget side as well. You have two special revenue funds here at the district. One is what is referred to as a special revenue fund. That's primarily federal money. The EIA fund, the Education Improvement Act, is primarily the state revenue side. And I simply highlight these funds because while you receive a significant amount of revenue, all of this money is restricted in terms of how it can be used by both the federal and state government. So while general fund you have a lot more flexibility with, not as much flexibility here, but the district does a good job in terms of maximizing that revenue and making sure it's being used the way it should. Food service fund continues to do well. Nothing else there really to say. And same, I've got some information on the debt service and the capital projects funds. All those funds are operating well. Again, all the monies that come into those funds are restricted in terms of how they can be used, so the district just needs to make sure that they're using that money the way that they should be. So I'm going to go on and skip ahead. You also have the child care, the enterprise fund. You've got a number of schools that have the child care programs in place now, and they continue to do well as well. They have just continued to grow, and things are really going well as far as that activity and that fund as well. I have some highlights for you on both this slide with capital assets and then one on debt, just to kind of give you a feel of where you're at. I know we're getting ready for another big building program. As of June 30th, you had about $467 million in capital assets. Got a lot of new construction going on, have kind of highlighted some of that for you there. And you actually have a lot of commitments that were both in place at June 30th and you've made since then. You can see a total of about, what, $175 million there in terms of commitments on new projects you have going forward. On the debt side, I think probably the main thing that I wanted to point out here is that first bullet where it says, the second bullet really, the $183 million with the safe refunding bonds. The result of that refunding, which definitely the financial condition of the school district helped, both in terms of general operations as well as your fund balance, the economic gain, the total benefit that the district is going to see over the life of this new debt is about $22 million that you were able to save as a result of doing this refunding. So you should be very proud about that. Okay, the last couple years we have talked about this governmental accounting standard coming up. This is the one related to the state retirement system and the significant underfunded liability that exists at the retirement system itself. The retirement system itself, the last number I heard was about $18 billion with the B. What we've talked about the last couple years is the fact that beginning this year that we're in now, the 14-15 fiscal year, the district, this standard is going to require the school district to begin recognizing your portion of that unfunded liability. This is the first time I've been able to come and talk with you and tell you that we now know about, we have a good estimate on what that number is going to be, and everybody's sitting down, so I'm glad about that, because we're talking about roughly $313 million is Berkeley County School District's portion of that unfunded liability. So there's three things that we've discussed before, but I want to remind you that I think are very important for you to understand. Number one, you don't suddenly have to come up with $313 million and pay that to the retirement system. What you have to continue to do is, as long as you continue to do what you have always done, and that is to make the required percentage payments, the employer and employee portions that you have always made to the retirement system, you're doing everything that you're supposed to do from a cash flow standpoint. So you can continue to do that. Second thing I want you to understand, though, is that those payments are probably going to increase. What the retirement system has done for the last several years, and everything I've heard they're going to continue to, is those percentages are going to continue to increase. So as they continue to increase, that just means that the district is going to have to continue to pay more and more to the retirement system. That's one of the primary ways they're going to make up for that unfunded liability that they have today. The third thing I want you to understand is that this liability is going to show up on one specific statement. Where it's not going to show up is on the operating balance sheet that you're all used to looking at and saying, what's the fund balance for general fund? Where are we with that? That statement is not going to be impacted by this liability. So this $42 million unassigned fund balance that we just talked about, you're still going to be able to see that on that operating statement because it's not going to show up there. So you'll be still continue to measure how you're doing financially by continuing to look at that statement. There's more we could talk about, but those are really the things that I wanted to make sure that you understood with this statement. Next year, we'll talk about it a little bit more because you'll actually see it in the financial statements themselves. In the back of in the financial statements, there's a section in the very back of the financial statements that deals with what's called the single audit. It is the portion of the work that the federal government asks us to do because of the significant amount of federal funds that the district receives. They ask us to look at specific programs every year and say, is the district complying with the requirements of those programs? This year we looked at Title I and the USDA National School Lunch and Breakfast programs. If we had compliance issues, there would be some findings here and in the financial statements. There are none. The district's doing a great job with the compliance, and I think it's been about 3 or 4 years since we've had any compliance issues, so the district continues to do a good job with its compliance. The other thing, the second document that I mentioned a few minutes ago, the management letter that we issue, we are always looking for ways that we can continue to bring some recommendation to the district to continue to improve how you're doing. We usually sit down with Brantley and Jackie and go through some things in detail verbally. If there's anything that rises to the level that we feel like it needs to be put in writing, we put it in the management letter. And there have been some issues with the timely preparation of bank reconciliations. Nothing that really that caused any issues other than it needs to be more timely moving forward. And though Brantley and Jackie have already addressed those issues with the people involved, and I'm not concerned about that all going forward. The last thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is there are, I think, a couple issues that are going to be very important as the district looks forward. And when I say look forward, I'm not just talking about the next year. What tends to happen with local governments in general, school districts and otherwise, is we tend to have a one-year focus, right? The budget. And that tends to get all the attention. But there's a couple things that I think I want to talk about briefly that I think are going to be real important to encourage the district to really do some longer-term financial analysis, projections, cash flow projections, et cetera. And those two issues are as follows. One, right now, roughly, ballpark, salaries and benefits make up about 80% of the district's expenditures. Think about what that means if there are nothing more than inflationary and step increases on the salary side, and we know what's happening with benefits, especially with health care and retirement. If you do nothing more than that and apply that to 80% of your budget, that is a significant number. On top of that, the fact that you're growing, there's a lot of growth going on, that's great. What that also means is you've got a lot of building to do. You're going to have more facilities. Your operating costs are going to continue to go up, even more so than just inflation, most likely. We think those are some issues that are going to present some challenges to you all to address from a budgetary and cash flow perspective long term. So what we've talked with Brantley and Dr. Thompson about is doing some longer term financial projections and analysis to see what that really means from a long-term strategic perspective that allow you maybe to get ahead of the ballgame a little bit. And I think that will, you'll see a lot of benefits if you head down that road. That's it. I want to compliment you and administration because the district is in very, very good financial condition. And I think you all should be very proud of that because if we go back just a few years, and several of you were sitting here a few years ago, 07, 08, 09, when you had to make some very, very difficult decisions, you're seeing the result of some of those difficult decisions now, and I think you ought to be very proud of that. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions that anybody may have. By the way, let me follow up with what Brantley said, too. I know you're just getting all this information for the first time. We always offer to come back and be glad to answer any questions or sit down with any of you. Brantley and Jackie can probably handle 99.9% of it, but we'll be glad to assist however we can as well.
That's the other way around, 1%, you 99%.
Thank you, Mr. Finney. We appreciate the wonderful news. Once again, Mr. Thomas, congratulations to you and your staff. You folks are outstanding. We wouldn't trade you for anyone, and I mean that. With that said, does anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Finney? All right, Mr. Finney, you've got it pretty good tonight. Thank you for being with us. I hear no questions or comments. And thank you for the offer to come back and spend additional time with us if we need it as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Thomas.
Dr. Murray, members of the board, and Dr. Thompson. The other item for action is a bid. Dr. Murray, I was hoping you'd let the guy from Boss stay because I wanted to talk to him about my dishwasher.
We can get him
I'll
back.
get him later. Tonight you have a bid in front of you, best value bid number 430-1415 for mobile classroom location services. This was rebid due to some new changes in the OSF, Office of School Facilities, changing how they view and work with mobile units. So we pretty much had to build those into the new specs. So we asked for your approval to award best value bid 430-1415 to Joe Powell and Sons and to S&P House Moving Company. I ask for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We've heard the recommendation from the administration. Do I have a motion and a second regarding agenda item 8, specifically item for action, BVB number 430, mobile classroom relocation services?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the best value bid 430 for the 2014-2015 mobile classroom relocation services to Joe Powell and Sons Enterprises Incorporated and to S&P House Moving Company as presented by Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Obie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. A motion has been made by Mr. Obie, seconded by Mr. Hayes, to approve BVB 430 for the 14-15 school year for mobile classroom relocation services to Joe Powell and Sons Enterprises Incorporated and S&P House Moving Company as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item number 8. Do we have any questions or comments regarding this motion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Thomas, your mobile classroom relocation services have been approved.
Thank you. One other thought about the audit, I wanted to remind the board as well, for 13-14, the board approved the budget. That was $2.2 million to come from fund balance. So we actually shifted 2.2 plus the 4.9. So I wanted to remind you of that.
Good news. Keep saving it. Good, good, good. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Next up is agenda item 9, Deputy Superintendent. Tonight we have an item for action, second reading of policies, IHFBR, JCDAR, JACR, JACE1, JACE3. Do I have a motion and a second regarding, Dr. Levine. Dr. Levine, if you would give us your recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Board Chair Murray, other members of the board, and Superintendent Thompson. On behalf of the district administration, the policy, guidelines, rules, and form noted under item 9 of tonight's board agenda have been submitted to you for your review and approval for second reading. Changes are being recommended for each of the listed items based on recommended practices related to the following: dual credit, IHFB-R as it pertains to requirements for students taking dual credit courses, the Student Behavior Code, JCDA-R as it pertains to telecommunications devices, Technology Acceptable Use, JAC-R as it pertains to independent internet use and district-assigned email accounts, Student Technology Acceptable Use Form, JAC-E1 as it pertains to information about CIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act, and last, Student-Owned Electronic Mobile Device Acceptable Use Policy and Guidelines, JAC-E3 as it pertains to expectations for students being allowed to bring their own electronic mobile devices to school for instructional purposes. As such, at this time, it is the recommendation of the administration to approve the second and final reading for policies as listed under item 9 of the December 9th, 2014 board agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Levine. Do I have a motion and a second regarding the administration's recommendation for agenda item 9?
Yes, sir. I move that we accept the recommendation of the administration to approve the second and final reading for the policies as listed under item 9 of the December 9th, 2014 board agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Schwabe. We have a motion to accept the recommendation of the administration made by Mrs. Lee, seconded by Mrs. Schwabe, once again to approve the second and final reading for policies as listed under agenda item 9 of the December 9th, 2014 board agenda. Do I have any questions or comments regarding the motion on the table? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of accepting the recommendation of the administration to approve the second and final reading for policies as listed under agenda item 9 of the December 9th, 2014 board agenda, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries unanimously. Dr. Levine, the second and final reading for these policies have been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Levine.